The Amazing Digital Circus has a lot of divisive characters. However, who seems to constantly be at the forefront more often than not is Jax. At a first glance, Jax comes off as more of a bully than anything, someone who sees those around him as less and treats them as such. Because of these actions, he's become quite divisive both for the audience and even the characters. But like most Digital Circus characters, Jax has a hidden side that gives weight to a lot of his actions that people don't quite fully understand, but whether that excuses him or not, that's for you guys to discuss and figure out in the comments. Let's begin. Like the rest of the Digital Circus cast, we first meet Jax in episode 1, and though the episode isn't centered on him at all, we get a general understanding of what sort of person he is in such little time. He's the one who breaks the group dynamic in all the worst ways. He's cynical, straightforward, and very carefree. That is the crux of his character that's always been who he is. All these sides constantly show throughout episode 1 when Jax does things like shatter any illusion of escape for Pomni once she arrives, ripping off Zubal's arm to scratch his back, kicking around Gangle for seemingly no reason at all, and never missing a chance to say something about Ragatha. While he's no doubt interesting to observe, he is effectively the black sheep of the cast, and though he's friendly with our characters to some degree, calling them friends is a little bit of a stretch. Episode 2 underscores this exact conflict beautifully. We've already seen him do things like kick around Gangle or rip apart Zubal, but in this episode his destructive actions are truly put on full display, such as when he grabs Pomni by the neck and throws her in between two moving trucks, or when the team completes their objective and he ultimately destroys an AI kingdom just out of a yearn for violence. Episode 2 does a great job at highlighting how little Jax seemingly cares for others. That becomes his thing, his overarching arc that the story wants you to understand. But at the same time, episode 2 also subtly sets up his internal battle. Towards the end of the episode, when the funerals for the abstracted are revealed, we see a very telling look from Jax that is vastly different from all his other expressions. When the funeral is brought up at all, he starts by looking dismissive. That's usual. But for a brief moment, you can see a tinge of sadness that's immediately overturned by his desire to retain this cynical persona. Ultimately, he never goes to the abstracted's funeral, but his actions expose that this is something that does genuinely bother him. But unfortunately, we don't see that side of him again for a while. It's not until episode 5 that we see the pain that this character might be hiding. The entirety of Stargazing is generally dedicated towards putting a crack in Jax's mask. To begin with, in a rebuttal to Ragatha about his treatment towards Gangle, he reveals that to at least some degree, he does care about the feelings of others. Though that might seem small, that is actually massive. This shocked our characters, particularly Pomni, who really thought that he was just an insensitive jerk. But that's only the prelude to the real gut punch. When Pomni asks if Jax has any friends and Ragatha subconsciously responds with, "Not anymore," we see a very tangible shift in demeanor. In only seconds, he goes from his usual mildly irritated expression to infuriated. But in his own words, it's nothing. Who cares? This whole conversation is incredibly telling, and even though it doesn't tell us everything bar for bar, we understand the general story. If Jax had friends at one point but he doesn't anymore, that means that his friends most likely abstracted. That would align with him skipping Kaufmo's funeral. Though we understand that, it raises a question. Why doesn't Jax have friends anymore? Though the cast generally are more often than not disillusioned by his actions, they don't hate him, yet they aren't his friends. Why? This time we don't have to wait long for answers. In episode 6, for the first time in the entirety of the Digital Circus, we witness Jax spend some quality bonding time with someone. That someone being Pomni. The two make a great team, and to a certain degree, Pomni even understands him. Or at the very least, she understands how he thinks and can get behind it. Though the circus sucks and everyone hates it, the silver lining is that nothing's real. There's no consequences to your actions, no punishments aside from abstracting, so you can lean back and do whatever you want. That is Jax's mindset, and briefly Pomni's as she absorbs this, getting closer to Jax one step at a time. For anyone with two eyes watching, it is clear from every angle that Jax and Pomni bonded. That is undeniable. Yet for some reason, at the end of the episode, Jax denies it. It makes no sense, not to the audience and not to Pomni. They shared a vision, and even if briefly, they trusted one another. So what happened? Did Pomni do something wrong? Are things moving too fast? This scene does a phenomenal job at telling you straight to your face that if you want a direct answer out of Jax, you aren't going to get it. But by this point, all of us, including Pomni, can understand Jax to some degree, and what makes him so divisive as a character and as an individual in the circus. But let's rewind just a few moments back. Before this scene kicked off, we get an incredibly telling sequence of frames. For starters, Jax is sitting alone on the verge of getting up and following Pomni, but as he watches her run by, his vision shifts to people who have abstracted, Kaufmo and Ribbit. And it's here that we see that brief crack again, just like earlier. The parallel to Pomni running by while he finds himself lost, reflecting on those who have abstracted, that alone gives us all the answers that we need. The truth is, yes, he was bonding with Pomni, but Jax isn't denying the obvious because things are moving too fast or because Pomni did something wrong, but rather because he's scared. It's why he doesn't attend funerals. It's why he treats everyone so poorly. It's the basis for generally all of his actions. He's scared of getting close to people again and having them abstract like Kaufmo and Ribbit. The way Jax maintains distance with the rest of the cast to protect himself is by being a jerk, by being cynical, and by acting like nothing matters at all. But this is again why he's so divisive as a character. It's easy to understand him, but in the same vein, he's still someone who has done real damage. Being a bully isn't cool. Treating others poorly, even if it means protecting yourself, is not cool. Hurting people's feelings isn't cool, and that draws us back to the scene at the end of episode 6. After being confronted, Jax goes all out on Pomni, trying his best to convince her, or really himself, that she means nothing to him. That he was just leading her on so this moment would hurt her all the more. That, in combination with Jax's breakdown at the end of the episode, realizing that ultimately this really does bother him, he shifts from your typical, cynical, carefree jerk to a character who is actively hurting, to someone who has been hurt by the circus, yet is trying to mask that pain. But this is still just the start, the first layer of Jax's deconstruction. Episode 7, Beach Episode, is one of the most important episodes for Jax for a variety of reasons. To begin with, Jax almost abstracts. That alone is incredibly telling. From the start of the Amazing Digital Circus, they make it quite clear that people don't just abstract out of nowhere. When people are at their wits' end, when they absolutely cannot take life in the circus anymore, they transcend. Those conditions aligned, and if not for Pomni and Ragatha, he would no longer be around. But in the context of this scene, it's important to not just say what happens, but digest it as well. Though Jax is interacting with people like normal and walking around with people like normal throughout the duration of the episode, deep down, out of everyone in the cast, he is the one who is struggling the most. To stand at the edge of abstraction, a period that is defined as the breaking point of a person's psyche, that tells you a lot about the actuality of his mental state. He's not simply just struggling. He's one lonely night in the circus away from leaving for good. But though the near abstraction was telling, the next scene is one that established a whole new layer of what it means to be divisive. Something that goes beyond just mere bullying and stretches into territory of truly morally gray behavior. Episode 7 is the turning point for the digital circus, and at the same time the turning point for Jax's character. With the introduction of Abel, who gives them the possibility of a way out, everyone has to give it their all. They only have one shot. But with their combined efforts, they eventually reach Kane's office and find themselves face to face with the computer that may actually allow them to leave. In this room, they're greeted by two buttons. One button to exit the circus for good, and another button to stay. But the answer should be straightforward. The entire cast came this far to leave, after all. Or so we thought. When the realization sets in that this is really the make or break moment for their time spent in the circus, Jax goes off the rails. In a panic, he hits the button that forces everyone to stay in the circus. Now, as we know, both the buttons were duds, and temporarily, Jax is bailed because of that, but this scene showed us a number of things. The first and most important one being that Jax was willing to keep everyone trapped in the circus forever. That's not just a decision that can be overlooked or forgotten. At the end of the day, everyone has a family and someone or something waiting for them on the other side. Keeping everyone trapped here is effectively ignoring their lives. That's far beyond just being divisive at this point. He's leading into morally gray territory where he's less of a trustworthy ally and more so someone who will work against them when it truly counts. But the reveal why he did this is what gives the scene emotional weight. This reveal is also what divided even more people on this already divisive character, specifically in how they perceive him and whether or not he's justified. When the thought of returning home crosses his mind, even for a moment, he panics. We see a few flashes of the real world, presumably his home, maybe a place in particular attached to bad memories, and it's this remembrance that sparks his breakdown. It tells us a lot without telling us anything at all. If he chose staying in the circus, a place that has historically already hurt him on numerous occasions, a place that prides itself on being dystopian and breaks people because of that same chaos, that's a testament to how damaging his home life likely was. So now we're caught in the middle of this awkward limbo. Jax has done real emotional damage to the cast. He's slipped himself into the role of the black sheep, and he's even sabotaged the cast in what could have been a chance to return to normalcy. But what's riding those actions at the center of everything is a long-standing trauma, almost a sort of conflicting trauma even. There's something at home that Jax is afraid of. Choosing dystopia over that says enough. And at the same time, he's still grieving people who are no longer here, refusing to let anyone in, and choosing to cope by maintaining a form of hostile distance. It's two conflicting forces, and it's the barrier between trauma and accountability. People understand him. That's not the problem. They've always understood him to some degree. The question is whether that's enough. Does trauma override everything? Does he deserve to be forgiven? Can he be forgiven? This carries into episode 8. Now, episode 8 in particular does a phenomenal job at highlighting Jax's ongoing internal conflict. To paraphrase, he does not want to return home like everyone else. Or at the very least, it's not one of his current priorities. When the crew has a breakthrough with Kinger, we see yet another breakdown, realizing that escape is in sight. We already knew Jax was hanging on by a thread, but if more proof of that was needed, this episode gives it to you in every way, shape, and form. But by this point, rather than stacking evidence, we're left asking, why? Why does he want to stay in the circus? We've known since his first appearance that in some way, shape, or form, he does find solace in the dystopian atmosphere, feeling a pull to the freedom and chaos. But is that it? Episode 8 explicitly shows us that it's not. When Kane loses it and puts everyone in a hell of their deepest fear, Jax's in particular is very brutal. We see people circling him, overcome by a never-ending laughter, while he sits there on the floor nervous, anxious, and afraid. One person in the crowd even grabs him by the ears and tears him apart, exposing the yellow, vulnerable undercoat usually hidden behind the purple rabbit. Though this scene has many interpretations, I think the consensus is that this is meant to symbolize his deep, never-ending fear of opening up to people again. The people circling him aren't just faceless dolls like we see in Ragged as Hell. They're people we've seen, people we know. It's Pomni, Kaufmo, and Ribbit, all people that we've seen him grow close to or express some form of care for regardless of his constant denial. These people who he perceives as his friends, ironically are the ones ripping off his first layer, his protective mask, and once he's exposed, laugh at who he really is. It's his entire conflict that we've seen from episode 1 encased in one brutal scene. It tells us that Jax isn't just afraid of opening up, he's afraid of being mocked, afraid of letting people in and ultimately losing them. Kaufmo, Ribbit, these are two people that he's lost, and it seems like such a small amount, but these are human lives at the end of the day. These are people who you form memories with, connections. Once they leave, you never get that connection back. All that's left is a hole. It makes sense why Jax chooses to act carefree in the circus, whether it's in the context of Kane's games or socially. He tried taking things seriously, and unfortunately, it didn't work. But whereas every other character managed to get over these losses, choosing to honor them through the funerals, letting them rest in peace while they continue moving through the chaos, Jax hasn't. They still live on vividly in his mind. He's constantly hurting. And after a while, he stops looking at the situation for what it is, and starts secluding himself from the world. Yes, it's a survival mechanism. Yes, he is scarred, and yes, it is sad. But as much as we can sympathize with the character and understand their actions, in the context of Jax, that might not be enough, especially as we approach episode 9. As many fans have started realizing, it's not so easy to just side with Jax. That's not because people are unwilling to see him for who he truly is, it's because of how the story has portrayed him since the very beginning. He's constantly been the bully type, the cynical type. He's hurt people, his treatment of Pomni, his lack of care for Gangle, his constant back and forth with Ragatha. Those all contribute to the greater picture. I know I've thrown around morally gray a few times throughout this video, but I want you all to sit with the idea that Jax is morally gray as a character. He's meant to be morally gray as a character. I didn't even bring up the fact how he chose to keep everyone trapped in the circus, otherwise spoiling their only shot at escape. He's done a lot of things, and unfortunately, he still hasn't come around yet for a redemption arc, if it's even possible to redeem him after the last 8 episodes have meticulously established him as someone on the other side of the fence. But looking at all of who Jax is in hindsight, all I can say is, it's a little unfortunate that people don't quite understand his character. I think people are very quick to pick a side. Jax is either horrible or he's amazingly written, but people often forget that both can exist at the same time. I think a lot of meticulous work has gone into crafting him. As is the case with a lot of Digital Circus characters, this isn't just a cartoon dilemma. Jax eerily mirrors a lot of what you see in today's society. A lot of people who have been hurt often cope by hurting others. That's common amongst bullies. You see it all the time. Bullies are secretly some of the most hurt people deep down. But you even see it a lot in adults as well. The reality of the world is that people get hurt. That's just the sort of planet we exist on. But to find some form of peace, people find coping mechanisms for that pain. Just like in my Ragatha video, we talked about her using kindness as a form of a coping mechanism. That's one of many examples. But on the other side of the coin, some people fight fire with fire. In turn to getting hurt, people hurt back. That's Jax. But at the end of the day, whether it's real life or the Amazing Digital Circus, there's really no excuse to hurt people. That's where the story intentionally allows Jax to fall flat. Your pain is your pain at the end of the day. Everyone is suffering. If you think for a moment that Jax is the only one dealing with things in the circus, you are very wrong. The difference is not everyone is using that as an excuse to take it out on people. I think that, being honest, Jax is a very interesting character. He quite frankly never tells us anything regarding himself, but we find answers for why he is the way he is in the things that he doesn't say. That is very powerful writing. Being able to convey full character arcs without any detailed dialogue from the character themselves, I love that. But something is still missing in Jax's arc. We have a start, we have a middle, but we don't have an end. That end will either redeem him or let him plummet farther into the pit. What do you guys think will happen regarding Jax? There's still 1 episode left, so I'm sure we'll see at least something. Following that, what do you guys think about Jax in general? Anything you want to add, anything you want to recontextualize? Let us know down below. If you enjoyed this video at any point, consider leaving a like and subscribing. That would absolutely mean the world. It's been Jax, no correlation, and I'll see you guys next time.